Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. But who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. We got so much crap going on, I didn't even have time to change my suit. So today, last Thursday, rapper Fetty Wap, otherwise known as Willie Jr. Maxwell II, was arrested while he was on stage at Citi Field. He was part of a larger conspiracy involving 6 people, including himself, of a distribution of controlled substances across the United States. And he appears for arraignment, I think on Friday of last week. So let's kind of break this down. So we have Anthony Leonardi, Robert Leonardi, I suspect they're brothers, Willie Jr. Maxwell, Fetty Wap, and you remember who Fetty Wap is, a very popular artist, Brian Sullivan, Anthony Syntje, Syntja, and Kavon Wiggins, also known as KV. So with the indictment, it's a 2-count indictment, so it's a pretty bare-bones indictment. However, nothing is bare-bones about the charges that they're facing, let me tell you. So in this case, they're charged with conspiring to distribute over 100 kilograms of cocaine. And this is a multi-million-dollar operation. Now, when you have a cocaine conspiracy case, any agreement between 2 or more people and an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy is all they need. You don't even need to know your co-conspirators, if you can believe that. It's really difficult and very overly broad in federal court to talk about conspiracy law. But in any event, so I've read the indictment. It's a 2-count indictment. And 5 of the 6 people, Fetty Wap being not one of them, they're also charged with a 924C count. What that means is they've used a firearm in furtherance of their drug conspiracy. Why is that important? Well, that's important because that 5 years is consecutive, and it's a mandatory minimum, hard 5. Now, in looking at this case, the 924C count is, and there's nothing in there that says that they use the weapons on anybody, but they just use it to protect their drugs. Okay, so in other words, they possessed a firearm in furtherance of the drug conspiracy. That means it's only a 5-year consecutive sentence. If they hurt somebody or caused somebody's death, then you get a much greater mandatory consecutive sentence. But in this case, we've got a 5-year to tack on to whatever else they're looking at. Now, in looking at this, if you look at the guidelines, and I've got them right here, if you look at 2D of the guidelines, you've got a situation where the sentence is driven by the quantity of the drugs. So if you look at least 150, but less than 100, at least 50, but less than 150 kilograms of cocaine, you're at a level 34. I'm going to blast up the guidelines here, and you can see if you go to level 34, just at level 34, what the ultimate downside is, without any kind of acceptance or responsibility or anything like that, with 0 criminal history points or even 1 criminal history point, you're looking at 151 to 188 months, basically right around 15 years. But that's not all. You've got 5 years on top of that. So that 5 years on top of that, now you're looking at 20 years. Okay? So it's another 60 months on top of the 188, which is the top end of the guidelines. Now, one of the guys already, appeared in federal court for an arraignment and then had a detention hearing, and he was ordered detained pending trial. And I suspect all 5 of them will be detained pending trial. Fetty Wap, or Mr. Maxwell, he does not really have that much criminal history. And granted, it is a big case, and so when you get in front of a judge on this kind of a case, there's a presumption that you're detained. So in other words, are denied bail, that's the presumption. However, it's a rebuttable presumption. So just like NBA YoungBoy was able to craft some kind of condition or set of conditions that would do two things. What? Assure his reappearance at court and assure the safety of the public. I think it's possible that Mr. Wap, Mr. Fetty Wap, would probably get out. I'm not sure on that because I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do in the Eastern District of New York. But if he can put together a condition or set of conditions, because he's not one of the people with the guns. The guns are kind of a, big deal. And that's why the other ones aren't getting out. But if he can put together a condition or set of conditions that would protect the public and assure his reappearance at court, it's possible that he could get out. And then that would require him to put up a lot of bail. So here's one of the things that you don't learn from the indictment. Number one, guess where this came from? Guess where? What? These guys right here, snitches. For sure. Without a doubt. All these cases, bought and paid for, snitch testimony, no question about it. Or at least that's where it started. Number two, they probably have been under surveillance, whether it's electronic surveillance, whether it's controlled purchases, whether it's through cell phone records, travel records. The idea was that they would find this stuff on buy this stuff on the West Coast and bring it back to New Jersey. Now, it is also interesting that one of the defendants in this case, Mr. What's his name? Hang on, let me get it so I don't get it wrong. Anthony Leonardi and his brother Robert Leonardi. Anthony was a correctional officer. Guess what that does? That raises the bar for him quite a bit. You should have known better. You used your position as a correctional officer. You did this, did that. Those can be in sentencing enhancements, right? So in the federal system, you can have certain characteristics of an offense that bump things up. So I just read you the bare minimum sentence. You can get a sentence bumped up if you are a leader organizer. So if one of these guys is kind of the main guy, and these guys are going to probably try to do whatever they can because they're looking at so much time to shave it down. Through what? Snitching. And so we are... we'll follow this one too, but these drug cases are very difficult to defend. And they're difficult to defend because why? This is 2019 and 2020, and it's now, 2021, almost 2022, 2-3 years later. Guess what? Their patience is fucking hell. They are just absolutely, these feds are very patient. Tell you a little quick story. I had a case where a client of mine hired me in a DWI, right? Not a big deal. We went to trial. We won. I find out later that what he did during that trial to earn money to pay me, which I never recommend. You don't commit a felony to avoid a misdemeanor. But he went and did some drug collection with a gun. And so he did that. He paid me. I had no idea he was doing that. And then he got the drug case. It was 5 years later, 5 years, almost 4.5, 5 years later, that they finally charged 27 people on this indictment in northern Minnesota. And it was all about methamphetamine. And by then, my client had had 2 children. He had gotten sober. He started a business. He had completely moved on to it, and he was not involved in criminal activity at all. And that case, the judge saw the delay by the government as a real downer, And so why would we interrupt with the progress that this guy has made by indicting him now? It's 5 years later, So what we did in that case, he pled. He did not snitch, but he got a departure, and the judge asked and it was a mandatory minimum, 5 years. And the judge asked the prosecutor, "Are you going to appeal me on this?" And the prosecutor said, "No, we're not going to appeal you on this." That was a bench conversation. So he wound up giving my client several months of home confinement, and that was it. And that's because, when you come to me and you've got a situation where you got a big trial or something, or a big case, and we can't win the case, I'm going to send you to rehab. I'm going to have you do all these other kind of cool things so that you show the judge that you're amenable to probation, that you're amenable to treatment, that you've taken it seriously, that you're going to flip your life around. And then we do try to drag it out a little bit so we can have some experience and show that judge that you're worthy of taking a chance on. And that's what happened in that case. This case, you've got a correctional officer who is part of this conspiracy. And guess what? I had that happen too. I had a client who had a big case writing scripts for morphine. And it was a prison guard who would go to his wife's obstetric, OBGYN, baby doctor appointments, and he would steal their fucking pad. There's a prescription pad, and write out prescriptions. And my client would go and get the prescription and cut buy the prescription for like $90, and then cut it into like 120 doses at $100 a pop. That's pretty good return on your investment. Well, it wasn't such a good return on the correctional officer's investment, because he wound up going to federal prison for 15 years, as did my client. But so these kind of, you see the kids chasing the shiny object, right? This is where I start to preach. And these guys are making millions, and they're probably feeling invincible. They're wholesalers dealing in large quantities. And the only thing I mentioned here was the cocaine. I didn't mention the fentanyl or any of the other stuff that they did. And I guarantee you that'll factor into this as well. So, but it's short-sighted, because the government is super patient. Not only are they patient, the government has, just like Facebook has, how about this friend? How about that friend? Well, they have that with fucking snitches. There's no safe way to use or deal, because if you, I sell to Michael, and Michael gets popped, and all of a sudden Michael, in order for him to get out of it or lower his time, he's got to snitch on three people, and that develops a network of snitches. So that is what happens. Michael's never been busted for this, so don't worry about him being a snitch, because I would snatch his nuts and feed him to him if he was a snitch. But this case is probably airtight. I don't know that to be true. I'm not hoping it to be true, but I know how these cases go. And you've got a guy who was about to get on stage. Probably, the only thing I can think of is that he's just not making the kind of money that he wants to. And, dabbles in it a little bit. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, he's kind of in it up to his neck. And just like I told you about, the leader organizer, there's other roles that can mitigate your circumstances. For example, if you played a minor role or a minimal role, you can get points taken off for that. So in other words, if you're just a mule, a mule is somebody that transports the drugs from one place to another. I had a case where a client of mine was, she and her husband were responsible for $1.7 million in cash and 149 kilos of cocaine. Their guidelines were between 87 and 108. So like a little less than 10 years, 8-9 years. And in that case, they were trying to make money for their son who they were sold a bill of goods on an operation. He was involved in a motorcycle accident, couldn't walk, and they needed $60,000 for this operation that probably wasn't going to work. And they were desperate. They sold all their belongings. They they went through all their credit with all the medical bills and everything. And this was the only way that they were both truckers, so they were used to driving. Well, in that case, I was able to get my client 6 months probation because of the role that she played. And did she snitch? No, she did not snitch at all. She couldn't snitch because she was just a driver. She didn't know jack. But, they're driving these cars with, and that's in this case too, where they have hidden compartments in the vehicles. They're using the U.S. mail. U.S. mail, they have dogs that go through all these packages. I can't tell you how many packages I have that start at the U.S. mail. They have a dog sniff. they get the probable cause to search the package. They find the package. They open it. They see that it's drugs, maybe test it a little bit. They close it back up. They hand deliver it to where it is. Oh, thank you for my package. Guess what? Now you're fucked. So that is kind of the life of these drug dealers. And you know, you're not some guy in Mexico far removed that nobody knows who you are. You know, these grunts are the one who wind up taking it on the chin. Top guys almost never get taken down. But this was a very large multi-million-dollar drug operation. And Mr. Maxwell, also known as Fetty Wap, he is, I hate to say it, he's looking at a lot of time. 151 to 188 is what he's looking at. That's without any criminal history. I don't think he's got a huge criminal history. And keep in mind that he was not on the firearms count, which is good for him because that's the hard 5 that he doesn't have to do. There's one more way you can reduce your sentence without snitching, and that is it's called a safety valve. And the safety valve, you got to meet certain criteria. You can't have more than one criminal history point. You can't have a crime of violence or a firearm. You can't be a leader or organizer. And you have to give the government everything you know about the offense. So you have to doesn't mean you have to snitch and testify later. It means you just have to tell them everything you know about the offense. And they have to give you that opportunity. So that is what I know about the Fetty Wap situation. Let's see if he gets out. It'd be nice if he did. You know, I don't like to see anybody locked up. And, you know, depending upon, this might be a situation where he was just a kind of a bit player in this. Don't know. Right now, they all have him at equal roles, except for the guns. So, I'm Bruce Rivers. You should subscribe and like this video if you liked it. You should follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.